Okay. Right, well, I'm here to extrapolate from the results that we've been getting from the work that we've been doing on the Tweed project, Tetrapod World, Early Evolution and Diversity, which is based on work that we've been doing in Romer's Gap, in the borders of England and Scotland. And what we've found, this is a collective project involving paleontologists and geologists, is that we can begin to get a synthesis of where we're finding our earliest tetrapods in the Carboniferous, immediately after the Hangenberg that Tom has just told us about. And we want to try and use this information to help us predict where early tetrapods might be found in the future. I'm sure you're all familiar with this slide, the paleogeography of the Mississippian, and we've only got a couple of places in the world where early tetrapods are found, in northern Britain and in Nova Scotia. What I'm hoping is that you will go away and find more as a result of what we're talking to you about today. Kicking off is that within the UK, certainly, for the last 100 years or so, the vast majority of work on Carboniferous tetrapods has been done from material collected from the coal fields of the UK. The coal fields are shown in red, and if we just apply a few of the known tetrapod sites, Dora up there is where I did my PhD work. We've got a famous Newsham. Toffshore is where Jenny Clack did her PhD. We've got sites down in Staffordshire up here. But there's one site that doesn't fit, and that's here, not in a coal field. And this is the site that Stan Wood found, East Kirkton Quarry, towards the top of the Visayan, which has got such a diverse assemblage of early tetrapods. But if we go to our study area, this is familiar by now, we're in northern Britain. Up here, there's the Scottish border. It comes down through here. And we're looking at what is called the Balagan Formation, in this rather strange colour, this green-blue, all the way through. There's the Tweed Basin, there's Tantallon, Gin Head that Tom mentioned. The very first tetrapod found from Balagan was found over here, near Glasgow. And it's something that Jenny described as Pedipes finii. This was described 2005. But that was collected in 1973 and sat in a drawer for a long, long time before it was finally recognised as a tetrapod. It had a label as a rhizodont. So, now, after a result of the work that we've been doing, there's the original site at Dumbarton, but we've now got sites here on the west coast of Scotland. We've got them at Gin Head, and we've got them particularly in the Tweed Basin up here. And that's where I'm going to be concentrating. We've heard a little bit about Bournemouth. Bournemouth is probably unique within the UK. It might even be unique in Europe, where we have the entire extent of the Tournasian represented along the shore from the DC boundary down near the harbour, right along to the ends of the cliffs. That's up here, you can see them coming along there. What's also special about this site, as well as having the whole of the Tournasian exposed, is that the beds are pretty well vertical. So this is on the top of the cliff, looking down. The harbour area is down here. This is the oldest beds, and they're young up this way. And you can see these standings here of sandstones. And these have been mapped by Scruton and Turner in 2004. You can see them. They gave them numbers from number 1 going all the way down to the harbour area, with the ones right at the base of the Carboniferous named as number 14, and then these sandstones here are the Upper Devonian. So as Tom said, this has been logged. This has been logged in a number of different ways. All of the sediments have been worked out, but in particular, Tim Kearsey, one of our colleagues, is particularly interested in the paleosols. What we found is that, we get that earliest paleosols coming in here, round about 30 to 35 metres above the DC boundary, and this coincides with the earliest tetrapods that we found. It also coincides with where we find the earliest lungfish. We go then up to the cliff section, and we've got a number of tetrapod horizons up here in the cliff section, and as you can see, it corresponds with a whole range of paleosol beds there. That's the first takeaway message from this particular presentation, is that there seems to be some kind of correspondence between the occurrence of paleosols and the occurrence of tetrapod beds. So one of the things that we want to do next is to look in this area on the shore where we've got a number of paleosol beds and see if there are any tetrapods there. This is up by the cliff. This is sandstone 4, sandstone 5, and over here is sandstone 6. There is a figure there, and that is Stan Wood, who's been very much involved in this project. He sadly died before the project got started. But as you can see, there's a whole range of different sediments between the sandstones, and it's within these that we find our tetrapod horizons. First of all, I'm going to look at this little bay here between 4 and 5, and then I'll come on to this bay between 5 and 6. This is just extrapolating through, and again, you see you've got the sandstones here, corresponding to the ones I've just pointed out, and these are the paleosols. So we've got a lot of paleosols in this area. There you go. Now, we've got 3 beds here that I want to just point out. There's this underneath sandstone 4. There's some beds over here, which are conglomerates, and then there's this dark material in there. This big gigantic spine came from under the sandstone. This is a limb element, which came from this conglomerate. And you might well have seen this figure in the PNAS paper that we published in 2012. This is the earliest known 5-digit hand or foot. And this came from that black horizon that I've shown you. You can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, and there's a tiny one over there. This is the other bay, and this is Stan looking. Not as clear because of the overburden coming down. Because of all of the soil and the grass, but you can still see the beds coming through, and there's this one that extends up the coast into there. And this is what I found in around about 2006. And you can see this is it, and this is it exposed on the shore. And you can see these elements. These are bones sticking out of the matrix. We also found lungfish tooth plates there, a stretch of vertebrae here. So we went, this is a tetrapod specimen that was found just below that bed. Very nice. It's actually some skull material up here, but I've not shown that. So this is essentially the pectoral girdle and limb elements with a series of vertebrae coming down there. We went back and did a major excavation of this in 2013. Ben Otto did some work on this for a master's project, which Jenny will tell you more about. But it's important to note that the fossiliferous stuff is here in this what we're calling a sandy siltstone, and it sits on top of the paleosol. Another word for a sandy siltstone, which we're not allowed to use in the literature, unfortunately, is a microconglomerate. So it's essentially, it's a siltstone with small clasts in it of sand grain size. Lots of stuff in here which Jenny will tell you more about. So that's Burnmouth. What we've got at Burnmouth then is lots of paleosols, and we're also finding tetrapod remains in these microconglomerates. This is the site that Stan Wood found, Willie's Hole. He found most of his material literally underwater in the beds exposed in the bed of the river. They are exposed in the banks, as you can see, they're gently dipping. But last summer, a team from the National Museums of Scotland, with other members of the Tree Project, put a dam in and did a major excavation in the bed of the river here. This is Jenny, down there. This is one of the specimens that Stan found. It's affectionately called Ribbo because of all of its ribs. Its head end is this end, comes down here, and you've got parts of the pelvic girdle and parts of the pelvic girdle and lid down in this region. Quite a large animal, as you can see, probably well over 1 metre long. Why are sandy siltstones important? Well, they seem to be where we find the majority of our early tetrapods. What sandy siltstones do, as well as having the characteristics that sedimentologists are able to identify, one of the things that they seem to do is respond to hot water. If you stick your sandy siltstone in hot water, it falls to pieces. This is a standard siltstone which has not changed. This is a standard siltstone. This is from the Dora site I did my PhD on. This doesn't seem to change with hot water either. But if you put this sandy siltstone, so this is from the harbour bed where we found material, this is from Tim's bed, and this is from Willie's Hole, if you put them in hot water, they fall to pieces. We don't fully understand why. It's probably something to do with the clay content, but nevertheless, it's a good way of determining sandy siltstones from the rest. So the next few slides are really just our interpretation of what might be going on. At Burnmouth, and probably at Willie's Hole, we seem to be dealing with a floodplain deposit, which periodically is dry and periodically is flooded. So we've got areas where we can see these different types of paleosols. And please don't ask me to describe paleosols because I'm not a paleosol expert, but there are those that are associated with heavily wooded areas where you get deep roots. There are those that are close to water. There are those that are away from water, but not associated with deep penetrating vegetation. Periodically, these areas are flooded. And it's this flooding event that seems also to bring in the sandy siltstones. So we're not talking about lakes where sediment is accumulating gradually over time. We're talking about these flooding events coming in and bringing in these sandy siltstones as mass flows. An example of this cohesive flow is this lungfish toothplate from Willie's Hole. You can see the body of the toothplate here, but if you turn the slab over, there's something else on the other side. And when you scan it, you find that there are a number of other pieces within the block. So all of these things seem to have been deposited at the same time. This lungfish toothplate has been broken. There's no evidence of lamination within this rock at all. And this toothplate here, and these bits, will have made something like this. And this is one of the toothplates that Tom showed. It's a Tenodus willia. So that's an example of cohesive flow. So when we're looking for a tetrapod, we're not really looking for laminated sediments, we're looking for these sandy siltstones. We do find laminated sediments. This is a couple of fishes that Stan found at Willie's Hole. So you do find the best preserved material still in the laminated material. But we don't find many tetrapods in this stuff. So, putting it in some kind of paleogeographic context, here is the UK. These are the southern uplands. This is the upland area. We're over here, of course, in Holland. We've got Germany coming over here. So, we're part of an archipelago with a main mass of land to the north, and that, of course, stretches all the way up to Greenland. But here, we've got these islands. This is the equator, so we're very close to the equator. But the other thing that we've got is, as well as the basins, we've got the land. So here's the Tweed Basin, where we're finding many of our tetrapods. But if we put in our other tetrapod sites, that's the one where pedipes came from. This is Gin Head. This is on the Ayrshire coast. And notice that they tend to be at the edges of the basins, near to the land masses, not, we found, in the middle. So again, to try to get some idea of where these things are, you've got to understand the paleogeography as well. This is just giving you some idea of the rate of increase of finds within the Tweed Basin over the last few years. When I started back in 1985, there were 4 vertebrate horizons known within the borders area. Eventually I found tetrapods at one of these, didn't find much for a long time, then went to Bournemouth, and then Stan started finding stuff at Willie's Hole, and we've just gone on and on and on. So there's a lot of material out there. This is not a gap. There's a lot of things going on. And I'm quite sure if we were to do the rate of evolution analysis that Tom described in the previous presentation, we'd find probably something very similar. So, these are the take-home conclusions. In the early Carboniferous of northern Britain, tetrapods are most commonly found in sandy siltstones, these microconglomerates. These are usually overlying paleosols, and they were deposited in seasonal overbank flooding events as cohesive flows. The low-lying areas where deposition occurred were surrounded by emergent land, which seemed to, we believe, provided a refuge for terrestrial animals during times of flooding. In northern Britain, these conditions were fairly stable over millions of years and provided the ideal environment for the evolution of terrestrial ecosystems. We've got around about 12 million years' time exposed at Bournemouth, from the base of the Carboniferous right to the top of the Triassian. And finally, this is a plea to all of us, is that similar conditions must have prevailed throughout the Carboniferous and are a likely location for us to find new sites. Thank you for your patience. These are my announcements.